Matt Schauf, Jared Small of DraftSharks.com here to talk some fantasy football breakouts for 2024. Jared, before we get to the players, we've got 3 of them that should be on your fantasy football rosters this year, but let's get into what makes them a breakout and really how we search for and highlight breakouts. Ceiling projections are the big thing. We've always had projections. We've won some awards for them along the way, so they've done pretty well, but a single projection for a player doesn't really paint the picture of his season. We know that lots of guys will outperform, lots of guys will underperform. Ceiling projections capture the upside of that because that's what we really care about in fantasy is guys who will perform but could really perform, right?
Yeah, especially as you get into the middle and later rounds of drafts, and all these breakout players are mid to late round picks. As you get to that point of drafts, it's really, I'm not going to say upside's all you care about, but it's a lot of what you care about because you're going to end up dropping a lot of these guys anyways if they don't hit. But you want guys where if things do go right, it's actually going to make a difference and help you win fantasy games.
And we've built our 3D projections to take these ceiling projections into account throughout your draft. They get highlighted the further you get into the draft because like Jared mentioned, as it gets later, you care more about it, but they're always factoring it in. They're also always looking at the market projections for players because we, don't want to be arrogant about it and say this guy is definitely going to do what we say. We want to also factor in here's what these 38 other fantasy sites come together to say in consensus about this player. So factor all that in to the 3D values that power the rankings in your draft war room that are applied to your specific format, the settings you pull in, and then give that real whole value picture to that player as you draft.
Another reason I like the consensus projections in there is it kind of gives us an idea. It's another version of ADP almost, right? It kind of helps us potentially predict where our opponents are going to be valuing and drafting these guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes we can be like, oh, they don't like this guy enough. Exactly. We're going to get that guy. Let's talk about that kind of player right now. And I'm just noticing they all start with J. Quarterback up first, Jayden Daniels, which I think is really one of both of our favorite players across fantasy formats this year. And I think maybe the best thing about Jayden Daniels is he allows you to wait a little bit at quarterback and still get somebody with ultimate upside. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen the archetype. And I'm not going to say he's exactly any of these players, but we've seen Cam Newton be a top 5 quarterback as a rookie. We've seen Robert Griffin III produce as a top 5 quarterback as a rookie. And I think RG3 might be the best template for what we could see from Jayden Daniels. Not as big as Cam Newton, but lots of rushing ability, lots of deep passing, and produced even without a stellar set of wide receivers.
Yeah, if you're a Draft Sharks regular, you're probably going to be sick of us talking about Jayden Daniels by the time we get to September. But
that's the goal.
We just don't want to make sure you miss out on this guy, at least till he gets into the top 10 among quarterbacks in ADP, which he's not yet. But yeah, I mean, let's start with the rushing because that's what I think makes him a safe pick at current cost, despite the fact that we've never seen him play an NFL game. But we know he's going to rack up rushing numbers. He had over 1,100 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns last year at LSU. He also topped 700 rushing yards in the previous 2 seasons, so it wasn't just like a one-year thing either. So he's going to run the ball. And again, I think that makes him safe. We have 31 quarterback seasons of 500-plus rushing yards over the last 10 years. 65% of those guys finished top 10 in fantasy points that year. 35% of them finished top 3. So again, I think he's a pretty safe bet to finish top 10 with upside into the top. I don't know if I'm going to say top 3, potentially top 5, top 6. Yeah, like it's possible. And again, you're getting him at quarterback 12, quarterback 13 in ADP. And then beyond that, I think he's maybe even underrated as a passer at this point. I think he kind of gets considered a running quarterback, but his passing numbers really throughout his college career, they improved each year. That includes last year, a 72% completion rate, 11.7 yards per attempt. And he was especially awesome throwing deep. He led college football last year in throws 20-plus yards downfield and completion rate, yards per attempt, touchdown, passer rating, PFF passing grade, the best deep passer in college football last year. So you factor that in with the rushing ability. And again, I do think that upside does climb into the top 5.
One of the few quarterbacks who actually downgraded at wide receiver by moving from college to the NFL, where he had 2 first-round picks at wide receiver at LSU, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. But, I mean, rushing plus deep passing, that's what we're looking for at quarterback in the NFL. He's like a smaller in stature version of Anthony Richardson who's going several rounds ahead.
Yeah, and the situation is not bad. I think we see a lot of number 2 overall picks come into much worse situations. I think the pass catching core is fine. I think Cliff Kingsbury is fine. I think we've seen him run a fast paced offense in the NFL. More plays is good news. And Kingsbury has experience with a young mobile quarterback. He had Kyler Murray in Arizona. Murray finished quarterback 11 in points per game as a rookie and kind of just got better from there. Again, all under Cliff Kingsbury. So I like that factor as well.
And if you're like, yeah, but he's risky, I don't know if I can trust him. That's exactly why we built Trust Factor into the Draft War Room now. So if you do get Jayden Daniels as your top quarterback, the Draft War Room him and be like, hey, maybe you want to boost the QB2 a little bit, get yourself some insurance here, just in case he gets hurt, in case he doesn't quite deliver enough for us to start him every week. You've got Jared Goff, you've got Trevor Lawrence, you've got Justin Herbert as your number 2 quarterback, and you'll be all right. Plus, if it's a 10-team league, there are going to be quarterbacks available. Even 12-team leagues, you'll probably find them. On to the next pick, and it's Jonathon Brooks. And Jared, I know he's been one of your favorites all along, so I'll let you do the sales job.
Well, it starts with I just really liked this player. I did his scouting report pre-draft, and I just kind of fell in love with him as I examined what he did, what he put on paper at Texas, and then how he looked on film. Obviously, Brooks did basically nothing his first 2 years at Texas, but he was behind Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, so I don't think we can hold that against them at all. Broke out last year before his injury, 114 rushing yards per game on 6.1 yards per carry. Also averaged 2.5 catches and 29 receiving yards per game. Earned strong marks as both a runner and pass catcher, and some of the efficiency stuff we look at. He's 6 foot, 216 pounds, so he has lead back, feature back size. We like that. The downside, obviously, coming off the November ACL tear. We'll see when exactly he's ready, but I do think by October he's going to be relatively healthy. And when he is, I think he's clearly the best back in Carolina. The competition, Chuba Hubbard, Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders, the name there, Hubbard was better than Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders was one of the worst runners in the NFL last year. So I actually think Hubbard is the biggest challenger. And if Chuba Hubbard's your biggest challenger, that's a mark in your favor.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a challenger. I think there are other guys there. I think that we got a rookie who was electric when he finally got a chance to play in college. And then the NFL agreed with the results that we saw there by making him the only running back that was chosen in the second round this year. So maybe it's just the Panthers. Maybe the rest of the league didn't like him as much. I'm going to bet that they did, though, and that the Panthers weren't going so much out on a limb. It's a new coaching staff, so not tied to any other running back that was already there. I think really it's just a matter of how much Jonathon Brooks can handle. I headed into draft season thinking I would not be so much in on him because I expected the market to like him better than it has so far. He's sitting at RB29, according to our site right now in redraft ADP. Maybe that climbs if he starts having a buzzy summer, but I don't think it's going to climb too far that he makes for a good pick, because especially if he's able to take on more work as we move into the season. I mean, there's plenty available there. It's a team that needs, people to perform on offense. It was one of the league's worst offenses last year. So there's really only upside pretty much from where you're drafting Jonathon Brooks.
Yeah, and you mentioned the new coaching staff. That's led by Dave Canales, who was just in Tampa Bay, where Rachaad White has had his breakout season doing a lot on the ground and in the passing game. To me, Brooks is a better version of Rachaad White. He is a guy that's going to contribute on all three downs. So that I think Canales is definitely a mark in Brooks's favor as well.
The final potential breakout for this video is another guy I did not expect to be in on heading into this draft season. It's Jaxon Smith-Njigba in Seattle. And I think this is a case of market overcorrection or recency bias, whatever you want to call it. Jaxon Smith-Njigba is a better pick now than he was this time last year because, for one, he's on the same team. So that didn't change. Now we've got a new coaching staff that looks more likely to work 3 wide receivers into the regular game plan. He's a year further into the NFL. Tyler Lockett is a year older and hitting age 32 this year, which is traditionally an age where we see significant drop-off from wide receivers, especially if we're talking about a player such as Tyler Lockett, who is not a top-level talent. He's been very good. Obviously, we're big Tyler Lockett fans around here, but the archetype of receiver he is, the way he has produced to this season, he falls into a bucket of wide receivers that have historically dropped off at this very age. So if you combine that with a first-round pick from last year who has already intimated that the new coaching staff has a plan for him that's going to improve life for him, even if Tyler Lockett's still involved, it's an easy selection to make JSN like your wide receiver 4.
Yeah, I mean, I would bet on DK Metcalf leading Seattle in targets this year, but I think JSN could very easily surpass Tyler Lockett. And I think it's possible JSN even surpasses DK Metcalf. I mean, it's, like you said, first-round pick. JSN had 95 catches for over 1,600 yards as a sophomore at Ohio State alongside Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. If he can do that, like, why can't he outproduce DK Metcalf? I think it's within the range of outcomes. Just a horrible usage for JSN last year, 17% target share. Okay, he's a rookie competing with, these 2 established guys. That's okay. But the 6.4 yard average target depth 77th among 80 qualifying wide receivers. Tough to get it done with that. I do think this new OC, Ryan Grubb, coming over from University of Washington, kind of known there for a pass-leaning offense, but also an aggressive downfield passing offense. I think he's going to change Jaxon Smith-Njigba's usage, and I think that's all he needs. I think this guy is good enough to deliver, again, at least as like a wide receiver 3 in fantasy, and I think the upside goes, well into wide receiver 2 range.
Yeah, and you're drafting him in wide receiver 4 range, so you don't have to expect it. You can just draft it and see if it comes. We have even more breakout candidates available in our Breakouts article on DraftSharks.com right now. And of course, Jared, as we've done for years, this is going to build into our single breakout pick come August. So you want to be around for that one. You want to check out the article to see which individual player we settle on as our top breakout. But all along, we're going to keep all the options available. We're going to keep upside mode built into the draft war room so we can highlight the potential fits for this breakout category as you move further along in your draft. You want to sync your league. You want to get your draft war room set up. You want to be able to highlight the best picks at every turn as you move through your draft. You want to join DraftSharks.com and let us be your unfair advantage.